Today we're going to paint a seagull on the beach. And the first question we ask ourselves is, what's going to be the focal point? Where do we want to direct the viewer's gaze? And you might just say, well, it's a seagull. But in this case, almost all of the painting is the seagull. So we need to get a little more specific and pick a part, a spot on the seagull that we find we want them to look at. So in this case, we're going to pick the head. And then the next question is, what makes it a focal point? What will make them look there? And it's going to be contrast. That's the first thing. So what we'll do is, you'll notice that the background is dark behind the seagull. And it wasn't really that way. That was something that I added. A great painter named Ted Gershner once said, "The background exists to make the middle ground look good." And that is license for you to add contrast, exaggerate contrast, maybe make things more saturated, maybe change the shadow pattern completely behind your subject in order to create a compelling painting. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is what's called tone the canvas. And what that means is we're going to put a layer of paint on here to change the value. Value just means how light or how dark it is. So right now it's white. And that means any mark of paint I put on here, I'll think it's dark because it's being compared to white, which is the lightest thing. So what you want to do is put a middle value on here so that you can really get a better handle on whether what the paint you're putting on is whether it's lighter, which is called high value, or whether it's darker, which is called low value. For oil paint, I'm going to dip a little in the solvent, thin the paint slightly, and then brush it on. This color is yellow ochre. It's just a neutral warm yellow. I'm using a very big brush because it just goes faster that way. And once you get it covered, you let it dry. Okay, we have selected our image and we decided what the focal point is. The focal point is the top of the seagull's head. We've also decided what color the light is and the corresponding complementary shadows. The light is a cad yellow medium and the shadows are ultramarine. Now the next step will be to put the drawing on the canvas. The first thing I like to do is make a mark where the top of the seagull's head is. That's about 1/10 of the way down. This is just ultramarine blue thinned with a little of the Gamsol solvent. If you're painting in acrylic, obviously you use water. And then going down, I'm going to mark where the bottom of the seagull's feet are, and that's 1/4 of the way. So here's about half, here's 1/4. I'm going to say it's right about here. Now, between the top of the head and the feet, how much of that is body and how much of that is legs? So it's about 60%. So here's half. So let's say 60% is right there. So the seagull is kind of shaped like a triangle, but it's not an equilateral triangle, which would be kind of like this. The head is actually over on this side. So let's go ahead and here's the head. This goes out to here. See, already I'm making it a little bit longer, but that's okay. And it's good if you draw with straight lines because those seem to capture the direction. The great thing about drawing like this is you can erase lines that you don't need. All right, so over here we have the tail. The tail feather is not going out straight. There's a real tendency to make everything straight and even. And actually this is going about, pointing about 12 minutes after the hour, if you're going to think about it that way. They have a little, they seem like pantaloons. This leg is more underneath the head. And they have a knee joint, and it's not exactly in the half. It is much higher up on the leg. The most important line in the drawing is where it changes from light to shadow. And I see that the shadow goes from under the beak, comes down, it curves around to about here. So it goes straight down, then it's an angle, and then another angle like that. All of this is in shadow. And the reason why I like to mark where the shadow is that helps me remember to change the way I'm painting as I move through this work. So whenever I see this, this darker block in, that tells me, oh, that's shadow, it's got to be darker value, and it has to have a tint of blue in it. The beauty of this is that you can erase if you need to. Now when we get down to here, we've got this beautiful reflection, and one of the things the reflection does is helps us get from the edge of the painting into the focal area and all the good stuff. So now we're ready to begin with paint. Okay, we're going to start painting this seagull with the shadow areas. It's easier to start with shadows because you can paint over darks easier than you can putting a dark over a light. So the shadow area of this seagull is a blue-gray. It changes color as it gets underneath. It gets a little bit lighter, gets a little bit warmer. And so that's from light bouncing on the water and then back up into the shadow area. So let's start with that. I'm going to use ultramarine, which is our shadow color. And I'm going to mix a little bit of yellow and a little bit of red in there just to dull it down and make it more of a gray. All right, let's see how this color works. I am mixing a little bit of white, a little bit of cad yellow medium. I'm going to just take a little tiny bit of this shadow color just to knock it down ever so slightly so that I can save the best whites for the focal point, which is on top of the head. So we have a little lower value, so stirring in a little more of the shadow color. And let's see, we got some of this up going up here, some on the head. now we need to do the wing, and that is a very light, warm gray. All right, now as this bird changes from, the body changes from light to shadow, it gets, it has to make a transition. So it's going to go to a shade that's in between the two, and it looks like there's just a little bit of blue along this edge. I'm going to use the warmest blue that I have, which is cerulean or manganese if you're using that. Isn't that pretty? And then maybe it's a little bit of a warmer, I'll put some of the ochre color in there and a little bit of the blue, and make this edge here. And I pull it across the edge because that's going to make it turn a little bit more. Let's do the little bit of light that's on the top of the tail feather. It's a dark gray, but originally, but now it has light on it. Yellow a little bit. Let's put some of the beak on there. It's warm, and so I'm going to use maybe a little red, a little white, and I put some of the yellow into it because that's the color of the light. All right, so there's I'm going to use a small brush and put a little glint on the eye. Whenever you make a highlight, put a little bit of the color of the light into it. We're always reinforcing the idea of the light. Okay, that's good. Now, do you notice that it's a little bit whiter, higher value around the eye? And since this is the focal area, the head, I'm going to go ahead and use that as an excuse to get one of the lightest lights on this bird. So I'm mixing white with just a tiny bit of cad yellow medium, and then I'm putting this right under the eye right there. There's another one right over here. And then there's a little bit on the beak. Line from the beak back in. And I'm going to change the color of the water as it goes through the painting. And the reason why is if you use the same color all the way through the painting, it's going to look flat like a wall. So in the front, I'm going to use the warmest colors. The warmest blue is cerulean. That's starting to look fun, isn't it? All right, let's say that from here it goes to a cobalt, maybe a neutral cobalt. This is just those two colors mixed. Maybe a little more white. Let's try that. Yeah, that looks better. Let's do a little bit of neutral in here so that its reading is further away. So I'm going to just take a little bit of this black and ultramarine and stir it into this. We'll see if that looks different. Whenever you make something neutral, it seems to go further away. Seems to be, because that's something called atmospheric perspective. And since these two things are in light, I'm going to make sure that that shadow edge goes together. All right, let's put in the darkest dark back there. That color back there is a very neutral ultramarine blue. I'm putting a touch of black in it. I have black on my palette. All right, maybe I'll make it a little bit grayer. So put some white, put some yellow, put more ultramarine back into it, a little more black into it. So whenever I put two different colors up, I try to see which one I like better. And you know what? I think I like the darker blue, the darker color better. So I'm going to go back and get more of the black and just go over this. Notice how I'm not making the line straight across. I think it's kind of interesting when the water, the lines of the water are at an angle. Things are at an angle, it's more interesting. Okay, now I'm going to make a blue that's ultramarine but darker than this and lighter than that. When I go around this bird, I can soften some of the edges. Oops, wrecked his little beak. Now I'm going to make a lighter ultramarine, so it should be more neutral. That's looking pretty cool. So now down here we've got some shadows that we want to do. It is pretty dark right in here. So that's just black and whatever was on my brush. When it reflects right here, this is reflecting in there, it's a little bit lighter, but still a dark gray. So I'm going to put some of that on. Okay, let's go back and get some more of the front color here, this warm cerulean. I washed off my brush in the solvent. I wiped off the extra solvent on the towel. I'm going back for white, dipping in the cerulean. So then there's these little cool little lines of reflection. Let's see if I can make some of those. More paint. I'm going to use a palette knife because I want to get some paint right there, and my paint is too thin. All right, let's see this. Staying with the knife right now, I put more white on here, and I'm going to put just a touch of this phthalo green. Phthalo green will be just a little bit warmer than the cerulean blue because it's, you know, green has yellow in it. Where else do I want this? It's looking pretty good right now. All right, we have one little spot up there that's black that I don't like. Let's see if we can fix that. I have what's called a wipeout tool. And we're going to come up here and try to just pick up that bit of paint. That seemed to work. Okay. Oh, and one other little thing I really liked is that there's a catch of light right there, and I'm just going to make a little dot of light right there. A little bit of light orangey color on the feet, and I think we'll be able to say it's done. And over here it goes like this. And that one's in shadow. Okay, you know what? You can really get into trouble if you pick at it too much. What you can do when it's wet like this is you can take a scratch out tool, and you can get them from Dick Blick, and you can write by scratching into a dark color before it dries. Let's try it. I'm wiping this off in between strokes. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this and you learned some things along the way.